Go ahead and call the December meeting of the Police Pension and Relief Fund to order. Just roll call. We have a quorum. It's declared. The media was duly notified. The first item on the agenda is exigent business. Any business? Full business?
Do we want to bring up the suggestion that Director Adcock made concerning the city attorney under exigent business?
It's up to you all. What do you want?
Doesn't make, I guess we could, doesn't make me any
Just
difference.
whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, in the previous meeting, the funding committee meeting, Director Adcock suggested, well, why don't you offer your suggestion?
Okay. Last month at the meeting that we had, there came a legal question, and Tom was out in the hallway, and I asked him to come in and answer it. This last week, when we got the Supreme Court information, I asked him to prepare for me a memo to show me if it was a good decision for the board or what. And I got to thinking, I talked to Lee and found that this board had paid out $89,000 this year for attorney's fees. Tom Carpenter, when talking to him, he said that he represented or worked with the fire pension group, and that he would like to work with this group also. So I have asked the board to look at the possibility of Tom's office serving as a legal counsel for the police pension board. And of course, Tom did mention that at the time that anything came up that they felt like that they wanted to have an attorney, if it was something that, a question they had against the city, that they could feel free to then hire an attorney for that one issue. So to save money and to have the convenience of having an attorney in here. In fact, we just got through with a committee meeting, and there were some legal questions, and now Sarah's got to wait and take them, where if we had legal counsel sitting here, those types of questions could be answered immediately.
Just to I guess offer my opinion on it, is we have seen attorney fees. There's, of course, the lawsuit had quite a bit to do with it, but that's not the only thing. We have seen attorney fees really go up. And 89 to, I guess, 89,000 is probably the most we've ever paid in any single year. I don't have a problem and don't mind offering or don't mind making a motion with a very defined caveat, and that would be to have the city attorney's office as a general counsel to this board. But there are times, and going back to '87, there are occasionally times when there is a direct conflict. And it's not fair when those rare instances occur. It's not fair to ask Mr. Carpenter or anyone in his office to handle something when there is an inherent conflict. Let me give you an example. The lawsuit, there's been a couple of lawsuits over the years, a lawsuit in '87 over probation. The issue that came up this time in the last couple of years, and others. There's others. So this is my point. I would make a motion, and then throw this out there for discussion. I would make a motion to ask the city attorney's office to serve as the general counsel for this board. But if there is any perceived conflict of interest by a board member, then we also have on board and keep retained a counsel to go to handle that issue of which there is a perceived conflict with. So that's my motion.
I'll second the motion, but with the foreseeing the future, near future, I don't see a conflict in the near future coming up. There's always been, as Ferris mentioned, one or two or three, where that would be a conflict with the city. I don't see one in the near future, and I don't second his motion.
Okay, it's been moved to part of second for discussion. Let me just say a few things. One, Director Adcock, the comment about if we had an attorney here, we might have an immediate answer. As you know, the pension laws and so forth are very complex, and if it's a simple question, probably so, but we don't have, because of the turnover in Tom's office, we don't have experts in pension. So Melinda probably was the best one, and she's no longer there. Secondly, I remember when we were interviewing legal counsel a few years ago, and I knew we were going to select this firm when I think it was Ferris asked the question, would you have any pause in suing the city if it came to that? And that firm said, we represent the board, we don't represent the city. So I just want to be clear with this caveat. Sarah and I, well, actually me, virtue of the declaration that the mayor and the board passed, serve as a member of this board. The city attorney will not, and the city attorney is charged with representing the city. And I'll give you the example. I think the one that Ferris was mentioning was the past due fees. The city attorney opined, and we think correctly, that we only legally had to go back 3 years. We had other opinions that said, well, maybe it was longer, maybe there's the do right rule and all that, but I agree with you, Lee. I don't, we're all seem to be on the same page now, but at the end of the day, Tom and his office represents the city, and I think that needs to be very clear. And he, unlike myself, is not a member of this fund and charged with the various charges that we have. So I'm excited about it, and think we'll save the fund money. But I think it's important to make those declarations.
Well, I've got and this is just on the idea, but I've got a question concerning that issue, and I don't anticipate it being an issue either. However, in the unlikely event that it became one, it seems to me that if a conflict of interest occurred, and it was an obvious conflict of interest, and that would be the only way that we would not want to go along with Mr. Carpenter's ruling, I would think. I don't believe it would be fair to have the city manager and Ms. Linehan vote on whether or not we obtain additional counsel, or to have a vote on whether or not we obtain additional counsel, because their opinion would be biased.
Can I clarify my motion?
Yeah.
In that regard, my motion was that if a member of the board sees a potential perceived conflict, okay?
You covered that.
Okay.
Well, maybe I didn't understand that, because I don't think one member of the board can make a decision for the entire board. So I didn't understand that comment.
Well, my idea on it was and it's what I think you were saying or implying there. Look, it's not a question of if there's going to be a conflict in the future. There's going to be. I mean, it's inherent. He is the city attorney. He is a very, and we've all known Tom Carpenter for many years. You just don't get, in my opinion anyway, a person that's more credible, that's more decent than him. But he is the city attorney, and that's what he is.
There's a lot of things that are going to come up, such as the questions that you got to take back, to David and Joey, that he wouldn't have any knowledge of as far as retirement, the pension laws and things like that, that I'm not sure that we'd want to rely on anyway. I mean, you want to go to the people that really know those areas, so.
Well, but I think Kim Chavis or members of the city attorney's office would be as capable of researching an issue as a member of
Right.
one of the other legal firms. I mean, I think that they have the same methodology. Now, no, that's not their core
Yeah.
practice.
Well,
But I think the other general legal counsel you were considering interviewing, or even Kutak Rapp for that matter, locally, doesn't have that either. That's why you see the expensive fees, because they're going to their subject matter experts throughout the country
So if
and conferring.
If he's sitting in here and he starts answering questions for us and the majority of the board, is it take a majority of the board, I guess, to go on to seek legal advice elsewhere? Or do we have to rely on the city attorney's advice
Well,
on
I
the board
mean,
level?
you all can, I mean, that's what we're doing is discussing this, but we can vote this motion down. I don't have big ownership on it. I just made the motion to throw it out for discussion. This is the way that I see it working. I think that most of the time, Mr. Carpenter's office is going to do research, to come in here with opinions, with some legal guidance and so forth, and there's going to be no question. Okay? That's the way I perceive it occurring most of the time. But I did want, and I think it is important, that if there is any hesitation because of the inherent potential conflict, and that's not a bad thing, it's just that he's city attorney, then we go ahead and do what we would have done 100% of the time without him being here. And that's, if a member says, I just don't feel right, then we discuss it, and that member may get over the objection or whatever, but then they may not. But if they don't, I think if there's going to be an error, it's got to be on the side of using the independent counsel of the board to deal with it. I mean, that's just my...
Well, I've got a question on that, and I'm just curious as to how you're thinking it would work. Assuming that there were a conflict of interest, or that one member thought there was a conflict of interest, would that one member then have to make a motion that we go to our legal counsel other than Tom Carpenter, or would it be automatic that if a member had a conflict of interest or believed that there was a conflict of interest, that would shut down Tom Carpenter and we would automatically go to our legal counsel?
Can I ask a question too? I mean, my concern would be that we've talked about the fact that because of the expense of an attorney, that we wanted to collectively as a board, if it's something that was going to take more than just a couple of hours to resolve, that it should be something that the board approved because of the expense involved. So the concern would be if you have one member that says, I think we need to refer this to somebody other than Mr. Carpenter, should there not at least be consensus from the board or a vote of the board that says we need an attorney's opinion at all, period? I mean, that you at least have some buffer so that you're not just automatically at one member's whim incurring lots of legal charges. That would be my concern.
My concern about that is that, and that's fine, is that if you're one member and you're saying that there's a conflict, then you got two members here that's going to say there's not, or I mean, they probably aren't going to see that conflict or aren't going to want another attorney's opinion anyway.
But there's 5 of y'all.
Yeah.
There's just 2 of them, but there's 5 of y'all. So,
Right.
That's
it would take 3 of y'all to,
Yeah.
Well, it would take
When we
three.
keep talking about conflict, what it really is the city attorney's going to come out with an opinion that somebody doesn't like. I mean, that's the history of the relationship, and And if the city attorney was our counsel when the past fees came up, we wouldn't have liked what he said, and we didn't like what he said. And that's where you're going to have the conflict. And then you're going to have, and then you're going to say, okay, we're going to set aside this area and fight over it, but we still want you to be our legal counsel. And there's, there's some inherent, relationship issues as you go forward. Lee?
But like I was saying a while ago, I don't foresee a conflict in the near future coming up, but going back to what Sarah was said, if a member has a problem with the city attorney, I think the member should bring it to the board, and I think the board should vote on it, if we want to have an outside counsel look at it. And it's like Director Adcock said, there is 5 officers on this board, and I don't see a problem with just that member bringing it to the board and say, look, I've got a problem here. And it's like Ferris said a while ago, maybe we can discuss it and get it resolved before we have to do it. But I welcome the city attorney on this board, and I think it would be great for us to have him over here. This is like Director Adcock said a while ago, there's several questions that we could have got answers this morning on, and now we'll have to wait. And we only meet once a month, 12 times a year, so we need to use our time as wisely as we can, I think. And I welcome Ferris's motion, and he seconded it.
So at one point, you all had decided that the attorneys would only attend when needed, but now it'll be, you want them every month.
Well,
I don't believe Mr. Moore was in here when this was discussed earlier. He may have been, but the issue that brought this to a head for me was in looking at last month's pension packet, and we didn't have the benefit of the billing from the law firms. I noticed that the Kutak Rock had billed our fund, I think it was $860 to attend the pension meeting the last pension meeting that they attended. And I thought, well, that seems contrary to their contract, so I called down and got a copy of the contract, and sure enough, it's $60 over the maximum amount that they're allowed to bill. But in a bill previous to that one, where I called and asked them to attend that meeting, they charged us $60 for me to do that, for me to call and ask them to be here. And then they charged us more money because they had to go and ask other attorneys what they were going to do once they got here. And so if we call and tell them that they have misbilled us and that they owe us $60, which they may owe us more, then apparently the cost of that call would negate any refund.
I think staff can talk to their administrative services people and resolve the $60 issue without being charged for that.
Let them call.
I think
There's a
we're
motion
probably.
on- You made a
Yeah,
motion,
sorry.
right?
I'm just gonna say.
Well, and it's still a discussion. Now, I got a question. Hasn't the city attorney been the board's attorney in the past at some time or the other?
Yes, I believe at some point in the past they were. Is that correct, Ferris?
They
What's that?
were.
I'm sorry.
At some point in the past was the city attorney, the attorney for the board. I said, yes, I think they were at some point.
I think
All
that
right,
was
and
when Mayor
I'm sure
Stoll
you
left.
and Lee was on the board when that was.
Well, I think Lee wasn't probably. I think that was just.
Do you remember what this, why the board got rid of him at that time?
I think Ferris was on board. It happened before I came. I've been on 20 years. It's been over 20 years.
It was a issue of opinion that wasn't well received.
And, I'm for saving money, but I myself personally, I don't think it'll ever work, but I will vote for it.
Well, it's more than just an issue of an opinion. It's an issue that to tell you the truth, it represents a conflict of interest for the city attorney to sit in here as our attorney, because he's not our attorney, he's the city's attorney.
There's gonna be too much
And he would be
conflict
the
of
city
interest on
attorney on any
on the whole
issue that he
thing.
was asked to address. And therefore, any issue that he was asked to address could be, I'm not saying that it would be, but it could be contradictory to the position that would be correct for us to take.
Let me suggest something, and if the motioner would consider this. Legal counsel, as I have said for many, I haven't liked the fact that we, haven't had attorneys here at our board meetings. I've talked about that before. But the board collectively made that decision. But my point is that we spend a lot of, the legal representation is very critical to this fund. And we have spent in the past a lot of time looking into that and making decisions. And I would like to suggest that we maybe, and there is a motion on the table, but that we hold off on this and have Mr. Carpenter come next month and talk about some of these issues, how he would handle certain issues. So the board gets a good, the board really has a sense of what his duties as city attorney are. And I think what he's going to say that because he's a city attorney, and kind of gets to what Steve was saying, is that that's his role and his responsibility, and he will be able to advise and consent, advise this board, but that ultimately his role is the city attorney. But I think it would be good to at least have him here and be able to talk about what really representation means.
I don't have any problem with that. In fact, I would welcome it, but I would be tremendously surprised if he didn't say that he was the city's attorney, and that any opinion that he would produce would be in their best interest, and that could be without respect to what was in the best interest of this board.
I will withdraw my motion so they can be put on the agenda, and Mr. Carpenter can come visit.
What-
Withdraw my second.
What would be the difference of him being the police and he's the fire? I mean, what difference would y'all have than the fire?
Well, John, the only difference I tell you is we meet with them every month, and those meetings last about 15 minutes. I'm teasing about that. There's just
60. Okay, 16.
Personalities?
Well,
Yes.
It's just easier.
this board takes its business seriously, and I think that's what the chairman's trying to say. This board takes itself very seriously, therefore, we discuss things and.
Well, do they not have about the same amount of money and everything? And would have about the same issue?
They take it very seriously as well, but they are able to conduct their business.
Well, apparently they don't take their legal representation as seriously as we do.
Well, let me clarify. I mean, the legal representation doesn't attend every meeting. I mean, we've just started more back on a regular basis with them because they've had a few benefit issues, but before that, it was more as needed basis.
Well, I think, to tell you the truth, Ms. Adcock, it has a lot to do with and I'm just guessing here, but I would suspect that it has a lot to do with the fact that we're all law enforcement officers, and we understand the concept of legal representation and what is required in legal representation, when a conflict of interest, what that means and what's required during a legal conflict of interest. I'm not so sure that the fire department personnel have that same concept.
And one thing is, we have a lot more quadrilles probably than they do. These officers change wives.
Really?
Okay, so we can sort of move on. We'll list this on kind of as a discussion regarding legal counsel and list the city attorney, and we'll talk to Tom about being here in
Okay,
January.
you withdraw your motion then?
He did.
Fast?
Now,
You
we're on
did.
the second.
Okay.
Okay, approval of November meeting minutes.
I have one, it's just a wording thing, but on page 4 of 5, E, the last sentence where it says, Mr. Hensley seconded the motion that passed a vote of the board without any no votes and only Sarah Linehan abstaining because a relative
What
had
page are we
applied.
on now?
4 of 5.
4 or 5? And what item are we on?
E. It's E. I think the item number's on the previous page, but it's E, the last sentence.
Okay.
Mr. Hensley seconded the motion that passed a vote of the board without any no votes and only Sarah Linehan abstaining because a relative had applied. A relative is a partner in one of the firms that responded to the RFQ. Is all. I mean, I would suggest that change in wording.
Okay, what was the change that you suggested?
A relative is a partner in one of the firms that responded to the RFQ.
In other words, the relative didn't apply, it's
Right.
just the fact that he was a partner.
He was a
in that
partner in the firm. He's not in this area at all. It's
Okay,
just.
Okay, is that a motion, Sarah?
So I would make a motion to approve the minutes with that change.
That's just, we gotta,
Oh, make that change? I
Yeah.
move that we make that change.
okay.
is there a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor, signify by aye. Opposed, motion carries. Now is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion, all in favor, signify by aye. Opposed, motion carries.
I might mention that if you just call me, before we come in here, I'll make that change immediately, and that way,
Sorry.
this has already gone out in PDF version, so.
Well, but I didn't see it until that point.
Oh,
I mean, when you send it, that's when I saw it too. So I didn't.
well, I sent you a copy of it before I sent it out to the general membership.
Well, I thought they both went out right together,
No.
but sorry.
I think what he said is just like when he originally sends the packet out, if there's, he sends it to board members first,
Right.
Okay. I just didn't think there were like a couple of days between time. I thought it went pretty quick, one right after the other.
About 3 days, yeah. You just didn't, you didn't.
I didn't have a chance to read it before it had already come out.
Okay, no report from legal counsel. Financial report, November financial report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, we've got in front of you the shortened report. It's not a quarterly report like it was last month. This is as of November 30th. November wasn't quite as exciting as the month of October. If you recall, we were up over 5% in the plan for October. November was kind of a back and forth month. We really were having a pretty good track record for the month of November until probably the last week. You had a really tough week of about 4% down on the market. The plan for the month of November was down 54 basis points compared to 59 basis points on a blended return. If you look at your index comparison, you see that all indices were negative, not by much. Wilshire 5000, which is your broad-based equity index, down only 32 basis points. International continues to be hit, down over 6%. But even the Barclays 1 to 3 year credit was down 45 basis points. And you have that as credit spreads began to widen out again. We've talked about that as spreads widen out, that affects the credits. And you also had a little bit of a give in some of the Treasury market. One thing I didn't cover up in the first part of it, for the month of November, we did close the books at just over $43,133,000, excluding the $41,000 of accrued income. And your drop balance declined by just a slight decrease to $24,187,000. Year to date, as of November 30th, you're up about 1%, 99 basis points versus the blended return of 2 basis points. Since that time, as of the close of last night, you're at 1.3% year to date. So again, going in the right direction. Kind of looking back at 2011, now that we're sitting on today, December 8th, it's been a pretty challenging year. We'll certainly talk about more of that when we close the books for the next report. But to be in positive territory now, I think has been a tribute to the overall allocation of the fund. Things that have done well, like last month, it's not baked into this report because they haven't given us the finalized number, but the Goldman Commodity Opportunities was positive for the month. during a difficult commodities month overall for our index. So you have those, you add in the REIT index that the board approved to add in a couple of meetings ago, has done well. It is to the positive side and also contributing interest and return to the fund. One thing we did do in November, we've talked about MLPs a lot. We still continue to really like the MLP space. A firm that we have been kind of vetting over the course of a year or more came out with a fund that we would able to participate in this plan. So we took half of the passive index, sold half of that, and took those proceeds and reinvested it into their active process. So that kind of goes along with everything that we believe in Core Satellite. You know, we've got you invested in indexes, which are going to participate at the market, and then we try to achieve additional rates of return over that market, and those are from our alpha managers. So it's about, you still have the same allocation MLPs, it's just you have now more active than passive, or right at the 50-50 mix. So we like that. The active guys have put together nice returns, doing better than the market, and probably they're yielding right now at about 0.25% higher than the passive index was. So we feel like that was a good move. These gentlemen have been responsible for getting a large allocation from Oklahoma teachers and continue to do well. It's the Main Gate MLP fund, which you'll see inside of this portfolio. Other moves that we've had kind of recently, the European markets continue to kind of go back and forth. You know, you get really negative sentiment going for a while, and then you have, like we said, it just takes one headline to get things to go in the right direction. A couple weeks ago, actually it was last week, the IMF agreed to do kind of a worldwide liquidity effort. Now, that's not really a bailout. It's just saying when you need money, we're going to let you tap reserves, and so you're going to have some backing there. So that was really positive to the markets. Today, or actually yesterday, the ECB lowered the rates across the European market. So continuing to kind of get some good headlines out of there that says, hey, you know, we're not out of the woods, but we've got some support into the situation, which has been really good. On top of that, they're also doing their homework, saying, hey, okay, when if this doesn't work out, you are starting to see some of their own countries over there explore the possibilities of what it would cost of it printing their own currency again. So those ideas are being thrown around, but right now everyone wants to hold together the euro, and they're certainly taking the appropriate measures. The big guns have come out to provide some liquidity, which is kind of what we thought may occur. Fixed income-wise, we're still hanging in that 2% 10-year range. What we expect that continues to be about the middle of the road. We expect, and I think we've discussed this before, range bound between 1.5% and 2.5% on the 2-year for some extended period of time. We're sitting right in the sweet spot, right in the middle at 2% now. That's nothing to get excited about. That's why we are in the MLP investments. That's why we're in the REIT. That's why you have the Goldman providing some hedge against the market, and some of your Prudential and Capital Point partners as well. On the front end of the curve, you're not getting paid anything to sit in. The short end treasuries, this morning, the 4-week bills went negative 1 basis point. Not the first time that's happened since 2008. It's actually occurred a couple of times. But just something to kind of monitor. What that tells me is there's a lot of cash going into the front end of the market to sit through December 11 and wait till 2012. To echo that sentiment, hedge fund conference just took place, and there is more cash being held on hedge funds than at any other point in given time right now. So all the hedge fund managers are pretty much gone ahead and mailed in the check for 2011 and are looking for 2012 returns. So anything they've got positive returns for the year, they just wanted to go ahead and play defense and keep those positive numbers, and then play the new game in 2012. We talked about cutting back exposure in September to large cap value, primarily because large cap value is dominated by financials. That's banks, brokerages, even some financial insurance companies. Today, the reason we did that, we said we thought it's going to be challenging going forward in a flat yield curve environment, but also a lot of rules and regulations down the pipe that we don't know what the effect will be on their profitability. Yesterday came out an article that said the debit fee cuts are killing bank profits. Something that we thought may occur, get reassured. Every analyst has come out, as well as DC, saying they vastly underestimated the effect it would have on corporate profitability for banks. So good move there. We'll continue to watch those situations. At some point, I will reiterate, we will be back in the game with banks, because there certainly is some value buying now, but I think it's just going to be some tough sledding going through here as we continue to weed out some of this regulation that's been passed down from DC, and there's still more bills to come. Any questions with the front page?
I got one.
Okay.
Did you get a PDF?
Yeah, I actually was going to talk about that as well. We had that discussion. The PDFs will follow our meetings. They won't be sent in advance because sometimes we're making adjustments to this file even the morning of coming in and making some changes. Because really we're putting together a lot of information when the books close on November 30th to get all these reconciled information. We don't have a lot of time, so once we kind of have this meeting, we approve the books, everything looks good, we've had the discussion, then Jenny will have that followed in short order. Okay. And who do we want that coming to? Sarah for you distribute to Steve?
Send it to me.
Okay.
I don't know if you have my email address or not.
I do.
Okay.
Send it to both, and that way we can keep it in the pension office as well.
That sounds good. Okay, so we'll have that done. So following every meeting, you'll get one.
We're sending the front page.
Just the front page,
Yep.
that's what y'all agreed to.
Yeah.
Okay. Going forward, we'll talk about another thing in fixed income. We talked about where rates are, and I had a question from another board that asked why the fixed income yields have been kind of being hurt in here, or why there's some negative returns in the indexes. Again, it's the credit spreads widening out, but in your particular case of what you hold, you also have a lot of good bonds that are unfortunately getting towards maturity. It means those things are going to slowly be cranking back down towards par, whereas we had some premiums in there. But if you think where 2-year bonds are now, less than 1%, really about 20 basis points, and you're still clipping 6.5. That's why we're still holding them in there. But you are going to have those slowly go back down to par. But you've had the overall 6, even 7% type overall total rates of return on those instruments. You flip a few pages. It's going to be second to last page before the pie chart. Sorry, it's not numbered. It starts where it's in the mutual fund section. Your first item says Fidelity low price. If you work your way halfway down, you'll see the new position, Maingate MLP fund. Bought it at 9.7, now at 9.79, yielding about 6.5% for the portfolio. So we like that position. They don't cap weight and market weight on a static index like the Alerian MLP ETF does. They look for dislocation in MLP prices and have been highly successful in doing so. As I mentioned earlier, we vetted them for well over a year, have an allocation with this group inside of LAPI, and have liked what they've done for us so far. Let's go ahead and go to the pie chart. You can see your overall equity allocation sitting right at 42.39%. Certainly don't mind sitting there right now going into the close of the year. We have had, as mentioned, a pretty good December so far, going from 99 basis points to 1.3 on the percent. Cash, 8.45%. Again, historically that would be pretty high, but given the state of the markets and where we're seeing other money managers and hedge funds, that's actually a good allocation, and we feel comfortable with that. International equity at 4.13%. You're still seeing some plans out there as high as 10 and 15%. Certainly, we wouldn't want to be in there when you're down 20% on the international market, so we feel good with the allocation there. Then if you're looking at 6 o'clock on your pie chart, your oil, REIT, gas at 13.81%. Those are going to be your MLP plays, active and passive, as well as the REIT instrument that we have in the portfolio now. And then if you're going at your 9 o'clock on your pie chart, you can see at 18.82%. That makes up your active real estate manager, your mezzanine manager, and your Goldman Commodity Opportunities Fund.
Is the 8.42 cash equivalents rather high?
Yes.
Yeah, for this plan, it's high. For where other plans are in the market, given the current conditions, it's not high. You're seeing hedge fund managers up near 30% cash.
Just because of the instability in the...
Well, some of it, Ferris, would be for instability. Some of it would be those guys get paid to be positive returns, and they're positive right now for the year, and they want to go ahead and mail it in for the bonus check. That's how a hedge fund manager gets paid, to be positive, and that's protecting any positive returns they have going into the end of the year. And then once you get into probably the first week of 2012, you'll see that get in between the 5 and 10% cash level. Not unusual for those hedge fund managers, different animals, and certainly being compared to peer groups. If they think there's some instability going forward, there's only a few trading days left in the year, they're just going to cash.
Is December going to be good or bad?
So far, it's been good. We're up 30 basis points on the plan for the month. Anything can happen. We're certainly seeing some more political jargon as the race continues to heat up for the 2012 election. European situation is kind of ebb and flow. One thing that we have seen good is the latest economic report for the Department of Labor's unemployment report was good. I don't tend to look at, and Larry and Alex, I don't tend to look at a month-by-month number and get excited about it. You kind of look at trends in unemployment, but we have had a good month of unemployment rate decreasing and then some revision on the month prior to that decreasing. So it looks better. I wouldn't call it a trend. I tend to think anytime you get this time of year, there's some seasonal hiring going on. So when you kind of dissect it, it may be kind of flat, but certainly you've got some good things going in for the domestic markets going into year end. Better unemployment and profitability is still pretty good with the cash on balance sheets for companies.
So kind of summarize what Bo just outlined. Rates are flat and going to stay low through the near term. The credit markets are still dislocated. European markets are improving. It is, like Bo said, it is difficult to get that many countries on the same page at the same time. The reason you've seen the recent market rallies is because they all think that they're capable of doing that. But the devil's in the details. And when they start sitting down and trying to figure out exactly who's going to pay for what, who's responsible for what, that's when it starts to get more challenging. Corporate earnings are improving. Retail sales are holding up. Unemployment rates are improving. And so, by and large, we feel a little more positive than we have in the past. But with rates this low, and the other thing I'll just point out, I spoke to a couple of guys last night that are buying a lot of real estate down in Miami area, and we're still seeing certain markets are very depressed. For example, this transaction that I reviewed last night was for $60 million, and it was being done at 22 cents on the dollar. All right, and so it gives you an idea of the kind of discounts you're seeing in other markets. Phoenix homes you're seeing trade at 25 to 35 cents on the dollar. All right, so there are dislocations in the market that are really concentrated. By and large, our economy is relatively stable, so we don't have those same kinds of experiences. It does feel like real estate market is improving overall. I will point out that under our guidance and some of the decisions this board has made, we really deserve some credit because we made some good decisions when we bought those MLPs that Bo just referenced. Incidentally, the group that we selected from only had $30 million in their management when we hired them. They're now approaching $400 million in assets. So a lot of other people think they're smart too, but their returns have been really good. Us being able to duck out and miss some of the problems that the value stocks have had with banks as a result of what's happening in Europe, y'all, it just seemed logical. That looks like a good move, but there's going to be a point when they're discounted enough, as Bo just said, we want to get back in that space. So it's hard for me to sit here and tell you that I'm happy that we're up 1%, 99 basis points for the trailing 12 months. On a relative scale, that's a strong number.
Year to date.
Year to date, well, that's almost 12 months, yeah. What do you think we'll do for year? Do you have any idea? No, I mean, we only got a couple of days, a couple of weeks left.
Well, being at 1.3 now, we've got some protection in the plan. If things continue, that we don't have any major economic hurdles coming up number-wise through the next few weeks, so I think we'll continue this trend, at least hold in this pattern.
I put Bo on the spot, didn't I? So that's where we are, guys. I know I have a full agenda. Are there any questions of us as we're moving into the 2012 season?
I'd just like to make a point.
Yes, sir.
For our members coming out, so we can put them on notice that we have to make at least 2% before we pay our drop members any money on their accounts. So if we don't go above 2%, then our drop members, they need to be aware that the accounts will be flat, zero this year. So that's just the...
Well, the other thing is that the numbers they report are before their fees. It's not the net
Right.
number, which is what the PRB looks at, so.
Yeah, it'll have to be above 2. Yeah.
We also point out that those guys probably are not going anywhere. Bo handed me something a moment ago. Negative, Bo, what'd you tell us? Negative 1 basis point for
4-week bills.
4-week bills. So you got to pay them money to take your money.
Right.
All right. And so I don't think there's going to be a lot of demand. There's still some alternative people are soliciting
Right.
with different kinds of products. But in today's environment, return of principals first, return on principals later.
The good thing about it is, though, if we end the year at a couple of percent, the good thing about it is that the fund made 2% off of the 24 billion assets that's held in drop.
Yes, sir.
Just as they did last year and the year before.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
So that's good.
And I just want, if I might, Mr. Chair, make one more point. We attended a PRB meeting 2 days ago as it related to talking about the discount rate, and I think some progress was made on that. The PRB actuary, Jody Carrera, had made a proposal to go to a standard rate for all, and there were discussions between 3 and 5 as the numbers that he was talking about using. Y'all, that would have a pretty dramatic impact on not the actual actuarial soundness, but it'd have a dramatic impact on the perceived actuarial soundness of this group. I mean, if you can imagine, just think about it for a second. You're at 5 today, all right? And I think he's trying to get everybody to 5. But if they went to 3, that's 2% change. 2% change on a 5% discount, so 40% adjustment down, all right? So that was not passed as a result of the dialogue that the board had and the presentation from Stevens, and they decided to postpone that decision for 2 years. I think that was the right choice.
And to leave it at 5%, which
That's correct.
we would have, this fund would have automatically dropped to 3 next year
Yes, sir.
if that action hadn't been taken. So we managed to keep this fund and some other large funds at 5 that would have dropped to 3. Now, that does have a dramatic impact on cash flow statements.
Yeah, I just want to point this out. For the same reason that you are allowed to remain at 5, that's positive for you, it's probably not good for little bitty plans across the state. If you think about it for a second, some of those plans are only allowed to buy certificates of deposit.
Right.
If they're buying certificates of deposit earning 2, and you're giving them the benefit of 5, then you're really not matching the actual liability to the earned returns of that plan. And so, frankly, I think that you guys deserve, based on your historical rates of return and what you've done here, 5% is a good number. That's a right number for you, all right? To give somebody else 5% when they earn 2 is wrong, all right? So there's probably some benefit to having a tiered system, but Jody's presentation yesterday was to paint everybody with the same brush, and that's what we disagreed with.
Well, and not only that, and there you jump in here, but there's one other issue involved that's important there too, is that what Jody was recommending doing was arbitrarily setting 5% from now on.
Yeah.
Now, we ended up not doing that. And we ended up not going to 3, which we would have, but to leave it at 5 for 2 years and to leave the tier effect in place so that 3 or 4 years down the road, when our averages get up to 6 or 7, then we go.
Well, y'all, this is probably more than you want to hear, but just think about it for a second. To go to 5 and say it's fixed, when your last, and he's looking at the most recent past returns, but when your annualized rate of return is 752, and we're going to place you at a 5, you see the disconnect? I mean, it can have a pretty significant effect. If you read in the paper that your plan had dropped by 30% or 40% in actuarial valuation just by the stroke of a pen, most members and most media, and probably most directors, would not understand the impact of that adjustment. It's not material because it didn't happen, but it's just worth pointing out.
Yeah, I would appreciate a report on that going in the minutes.
Sir?
I was telling Steve I would appreciate it.
Any questions for us?
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for having us today.
I think we do intend to do that, and last month we talked about it, and they were comfortable with that.
Okay, cool.
Okay, Roger?
Yes, sir. Don't have a whole lot to report to you other than from the legislature. They're having another retirement committee meeting next week in Jonesboro. They've done a series of these, starting with one in Rogers, one in Arkadelphia, and this one will be in Jonesboro. I assume after the first of the year they'll do another one
maybe in Little Rock. The purpose is to kind of invite the public to come, those members that are affected by any of the public retirement plans, which would be APERS members, teachers members, fire and police, mainly LOPFI members. So far, the 2 meetings that have been held, the attendance has been extremely high on the side of teachers and some APERS members. There were rumors out there that the legislature was going to consider doing away or eliminating the drop programs. That got the teachers stirred up. And their director has kind of loaded the room. He has put out information through his newsletter or whatever, encouraging teachers to show up. And by the way, they returned their interest rate credit on their drop counts to 6%, where APERS is still down at about 3%, I think, 2 or 3%. And I'm not sure that was a real good move on the part of teachers, but the teachers like it.
I'll bet.
And then all the people over at APERS say, well, look, teachers did it, how come you haven't done it? And if you all noticed in the Democrat Gazette this week, at the latest board meeting of teacher retirement, their unfunded liabilities slipped from 52 years now to 62 years. And their board is taking the approach that all it will require to fix all this is a year or 2 of good returns. And bottom line is that they are not increasing their contribution rate, which is what they need to do. And the reason they're not increasing their contribution rate is their board has a lot of superintendents on it, and they don't want to raise the cost for the employer. And whether they ever do anything or not remains to be seen. They can't really raise their contribution rate without legislative action anyway. So they're at least a year off or more before that could happen. We'll have to see what happens in the next year. But it is indicative of people wanting to be told what they want to hear. And, you know, pay me 6% on my drop account because that's what you ought to do, when the real world out there, in the real market, there's no justification at all for that. It's very irresponsible, I think. And we'll definitely have the attention of the legislature. I think they're going to look very strongly at a lot of these plans. There is no threat, by the way, to your plan in any way, shape, or form. The legislation passed last session is having a major impact on funding in a positive way. Obviously for your plan and some others that are larger. I think the smaller plans are going to begin to feel the bite next year as their contribution rates gradually ramp up. It'll be a 1% increase for them next year and 1% the following year. So those smaller towns are going to be required to pay in a little more, a little higher percentage of payroll than they were before, and to level the playing field. And I think that's a positive thing in the long run. I can't see anybody trying to undo that. Unless, Mr. Chairman, you are hearing anything otherwise out of the municipal league. I'm not hearing anything.
I think you're on target.
Yeah, and I think they have, I don't know that they're ever going to be comfortable with it, but I think they've kind of accepted that this is the fairest thing to do, to make these old plans, to treat them, the cities anyway, alike as much as possible of what their required contribution rates are. So we continue to watch with interest what's going on out there in terms of legislative attitude. There's an awful lot of movement right now of people jumping up and announcing they're going to run for office. There's some 200 people that have indicated they're going to run for the legislature for either the Senate or the House. And you only have 135 seats, so that gives you an idea of how many challenges there will be. Some of them are open seats and you got multiple people running. There will be a lot of primaries in the spring. And the only thing I would say is I hate to lose experienced legislators. Term limits automatically do that to us. And with new people coming in, it's always a challenge because they come in with, at least some of them, with negative attitudes toward public pension plans. And if you notice recently, Congressman Griffin, in his efforts to get a little media, he's filed a bill to eliminate congressional pensions for congressmen, that they shouldn't have any. And if you read on through this, his bottom line is everybody ought to have a 401k. And we shouldn't have pensions. We shouldn't have, the corporate world doesn't have any pensions anymore, and really the only place that is left to have defined benefit programs are primarily public entities. And I would just say this concerning that. If you take the entire and total economic impact in this state alone, in this town, in this community, from the pension checks that former public employees receive, it's a big part of the economy. And over the next few decades, if you eliminated that, can you imagine what that would do to economies in a lot of communities? It would have a negative impact, not a positive one. So public pension plans aren't fancy, they're not sexy, they're not rich, but they are steady, and they do provide very important revenue so that people can eventually retire on a livable income. This particular plan's income hasn't really been livable, so because you don't have a COLA, you're pretty well flat. Anyway, I don't have a whole lot else to add. I am anxious to hear the report about the lawsuit. I got your email the other day. And is there anything else that I didn't make that PRB meeting? Is there anything else you can kind of tell me about how that went?
Yeah, just be prepared at the next session. There are some, Mayor Rusty, of course, was on the board, and Lee was attending day before yesterday at PRB, and Camden, just as an example, Mayor from Camden, who's on the board, was asked Jody a lot of questions concerning the formula for the allocation, and made his displeasure and disappointment with that.
But he congratulated Little Rock.
But he did congratulate Little Rock. It may have been a bit of sarcasm in his congratulations. Mayor's a good guy, but and it's easy to understand his concern. But the question that was asked Jody after he really did get on Jody, and just told him he was really upset because he would not have supported that legislation had he known that. The question was asked, across the board, does this legislation tend to benefit those funds the most that are more severely underfunded while benefiting much less those that are well-funded? And Jody's reply was yes. Now, as much displeasure as there is with it, it is doing what it was intended to do, and that is to bundle the money, if you will, allocate the money to those funds more severely underfunded. The point is, be prepared in the next session because there's going to be a lot of grumbling and efforts, I'm sure, to.
And also, correct me if I'm wrong, we were removed from the insolvent fund list.
Yes, we were removed from the insolvent fund list. That
was good news.
Projected insolvent.
Congratulations. Anyway, I have, that's my head.
Okay. All right, I really don't have anything new on the non-smokers insurance premium discount.
I've got a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
From a couple of old things that we discussed, and that was Wi-Fi access in City Hall. I think you said that.
We are, I've given our IT department the go-ahead to try to get this wired. Right now, it is only in the rotunda. In fact, with my new phone, there was this app or something they needed to update, and they had to leave my office and go to the rotunda to do it. So, but we're closer than we've been, and I think the next month or two we should have it all wired, so to speak.
Back to the non-smoker.
Let's Steve, I'll come back. Okay.
I had another question, and that was, and this was also, I think you said earlier, would depend on the sales tax, and that was to allow us to have space on the city's website to where we could post our audio.
And that
if you misunderstood about, that really doesn't have anything with sales tax, that's just capacity. And now we are, as a result of the sales tax, we're able to increase, some of those areas, but I'll look at that again, Steve, but last time I checked, it's more of a capacity issue with our current system, and we're not just gonna turn around and get a whole new system in 2012, but we're trying to do as much as we can. In the sales sector, there was money for IT improvements, and we'll continue to look at that. Anything else? Okay. Yes.
Back to the non-smoking issue, I sit on the task force for the insurance committee that you pointed me to, and I appreciate that. I guess I'm the only retiree on that committee. I represent the retirees from all departments around the city who carry the city insurance. We just got word that the family plan is probably going to go up a little over $50 a month, and for the insurance for the retirees on the family plan. And the insurance will go up some for the officers also. But the non-smoking issue has been a guesstimate, just a guesstimate. That it's about $50,000 if everybody that's retired in the whole city received it. And it was my suggestion that we not do that, that we ask for an affidavit, something from a doctor saying that the member and the spouse are non-tobacco users, and it be from a doctor and a medical doctor before they can receive that discount. For employees, I think it's great to them sign an affidavit saying that they're non-tobacco users and let it with that. But for retirees, they live out of state. The city does not have any contact with them. They don't know if they use tobacco or don't use tobacco. But to receive that discount, they must have something from a doctor saying that the member and his spouse does not use tobacco to receive that. And if we do that, I think it will drive the cost way, way down, and I think it will be something that we could possibly look at. But I just do not believe giving retirees just a blank check, sign a piece of paper saying, I want that discount, because that discount is $100 a month. And it's very important to the retirees to receive that, the ones that deserve it. Now, the reason I think the ones that deserve it should get it, they're the ones that's taking care of their health. They're the ones that's not going to the doctor as much. They're the ones that's trying to do the right thing, to not use tobacco. And by not using tobacco, doing the right thing, it drives down the cost for everybody on the plan that the city has for us.
Did something change though? Because I thought that the city paid the same premium regardless, that we did not actually get to pay the carrier less for people not using tobacco. They were giving a credit, so to speak. The city still pays the same premium. They're just paying a larger portion of the family coverage for those that are non-tobacco users to incent non-tobacco use. But my understanding is what we pay QualChoice is the same premium regardless.
It's my understanding through personnel that it would be around $80,000 a couple of years ago for retirees to receive that, and the city couldn't afford it. And now I think it's down around $50,000 for everybody, and I don't believe in giving it to everybody. There's the number figure, if you can find out that, because that's what they're telling me. And it is about $100
it's about 69,000 last time I checked. It's not 80, but it's about 69.
That's 69.
I think some people have.
But is that for the city to contribute? It's not, because we do pay QualChoice the same amount.
Yeah, that would be the additional cost to the city.
To give a credit to encourage non-tobacco use, but what we have to pay QualChoice is the same.
So you have to absorb that cost.
Right.
Right.
What I would like
It's
to
about 69,000.
I would like to see maybe a study done on it to send out to these retirees that have that family plan and ask them, do they smoke, do they don't smoke, and some kind of study to get a ballpark figure of how much money we're talking about. Because I just don't believe in giving it to letting them have every one. And not mentioning to it that it needs to be certified by a doctor. It will be certified by a doctor, and that makes them pretty honest when you do that, if you put that little clause in there. But I would like to see a little more tighten it down a little more to see exactly how much money we are talking about, if that's possible.
Last time I checked, just on everybody who was getting the discount, it was about, there were only, let me put it the other way, there were only about, there were less than 50 people that basically acknowledged that they were or their family members were tobacco users in the entire organization.
Around 50?
Less than 50.
Is that with actives and everybody?
It was just current.
Current employees?
Yeah. So we, you know, and I've talked to the departments about, you know, you're basically, just accepting their word that, you know, that is not.
Sure.
Well, I'd just like to state that I am a smoker, and I'd like to correct something that my learned colleague here, Mr. Harrod, said, is that if you're doing the right thing and not smoking, and there's nothing that makes not smoking the right thing, it's just a thing. So, Lee, being a smoker, I object to your terminology of been doing the right thing, but I agree with Lee that this is an issue that needs to be hashed out for those who smoke. I mean, for those who don't smoke.
I have a question, Bruce. Do we not ask them if, you know, we've got 2,000 something employees, and I drive around enough to know that we've got employees standing out smoking. Do we not have any type of checking on that?
Yeah, I mean, one, they're signing an affidavit that's saying that they don't use tobacco products, and none of their family members do. And I'll be honest, the majority of them of the 50 were in the police department. You know, they just said, yeah, you know, I smoke, and you know, but
Just shows their honesty.
but and don't put that in the minutes. That wasn't. I mean, so you know, it's something we've talked about how we tighten it up. You know, you know, whether it's Lee's suggestion of having to get some type of medical review of that. So anyway, we'll continue to look at it.
They may have been smoking electronic cigarettes and they're not using tobacco if they're smoking electronic cigarettes.
Well, but you know, I one of my employees that you know we're getting a discount. You know, I saw him you know, dipping tobacco. I said, you know, that's tobacco. You know?
It's not smoking, though.
But it's just
Use
tobacco.
tobacco products.
I know, but there is a difference.
But
Oh, we got a touchy spot there, didn't we?
Is it different if people have lung cancer?
No, it ain't. There is no
Yeah.
actual
Yeah, the
dedication.
difference is
There
where
is no
cancer presents
documentation
itself.
proving that does
I
cause
guess
cancer.
I guess my
None.
point is, it is a lot of money.
Period.
And it means a lot of
Period.
money.
How about emphysema?
Nope, none.
okay, report from the secretary.
Talking about
Any
people not
updates?
Well, I don't really have any updates.
Okay, report from Sheriff. Go ahead.
My doctor said.
Go ahead.
I said I don't have any.
Oh, okay. All right, report from the treasurer, Sarah.
If you'll turn to tab 10A for the financial report for November. The first page of the financial report is a listing of all the assets that just summarizes the information found in the report from Stevens. As on line 52, as of the end of the month of November, there were $43,175,254 in assets managed by Stevens. The total value of the plan is on line 51. It's the $44,563,570, and the difference being the cash deposit and the taxes payable. The November drop balance was $24,187,634. On the next page is the income and expenditures for the fund for the month. You'll see on line 3 the property tax. This is the large deposit that we receive annually. It was almost $1.3 million, which brings the total year-to-date to $3,497,833. The income to the fund, excluding investment returns, Year-to-date is now $4,860,428. Benefit payments during the month before drop were $656,158. Year-to-date, $7.1 million. That means that net revenue for the month before drop in investment returns was $670,000. The loss year-to-date, benefit payments over income to the fund, was $2.2 million. During the month, there were $88,000 in drop payments dispersed. Year-to-date, that's $2.2 million. So the net revenue for the month before investment returns was $581,957. Year-to-date, a loss of $4,533,000. The investment returns overall, with the change in the market value, were actually a loss of $244,000. Year-to-date, $89,413. That's that slightly less than 1% that they were talking about. And actually, the number they were referring to is the $312,000 that's on line 40. That's the gross investment before their fees. That $89,000 is net of fees. The net income to the fund for the month then was $337,000, a loss of $4.4 million year-to-date. I will tell you that Debbie and I have been watching very closely to determine how much we will need to contribute before year-end to ensure that we qualify for the additional allocation. And I think as of the end of November, we were $118,000 short. We have one more property tax deposit that will come in, but it will be very small because it's primarily homestead. It's not, there's very few collections in the last month. So we are watching that, and we'll make that transfer prior to year end to make sure that we've got what we need. The city board authorized $150,000, so we're within what we need.
Which line, Sarah, is the sale of confiscated property and stored money?
11.
11?
Confiscated
No,
goods.
it's 12. No, it says 11. Confiscated goods, 16,000.
You talking about
Last year, 3,000 this year.
Oh, you're on the asset page.
Oh.
Income statement.
Why
Yeah,
is it
now I
down?
think there was an amount that had to be paid back in a previous month. That's why the year-to-date is smaller than the month. And do you remember what that was, Kathy?
Was that not the first of the year?
Yeah.
Whenever that officer was suspended and we had to pay back?
There was some amount that had to
Wasn't the
be
first of the year like that?
returned, which is why the year-to-date number's less than the monthly number.
Well, that confiscated goods, but it will be a separate line for the suspended. That would be line 5, right?
Right, suspended employees, line
Wow.
5.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm thinking of, the suspended employee.
I suggested to Chief Thomas, seen him up here last month, hope it was all right, that instead of terminating to maybe just suspend them.
We did have to pay.
We have a progressive disciplinary
We did have to pay
policy. There's a, you
$2,002.
know.
We sure did.
Oh, okay.
That was it.
Confiscated goods, now, the auction is what they have over here underneath the property, is that what they're talking about?
Well, they just do that on guns, long guns. They actually send the property off to California and it's auctioned online, which actually brings in more money.
More?
Huh?
More money?
Brings in more than local auctions, yes.
Hey, do we get,
Yeah, thousands of people
Yeah.
trying to buy stuff as opposed to a handful.
Yes.
More competition means more money.
Sarah, I'd like to ask if you, is this report that you're doing here, is that in Excel format? Okay, could you email it to me? What I'm thinking about doing is putting on the website all of our pension meeting packets, go through and PDF all of them. And what I'd like to do is have one that's current so that people could get in there and read what we're looking at, prior to the meeting. And then, because we always talk about your financial report, and it's in the minutes, I'd like to have this included in there.
We can print it to PDF and send it to you.
It's
Well,
on-
I'd really rather have it in an Excel format, that way I can create a PDF
Well,
using it.
I don't like to send financial records in Excel format because they can be changed.
Okay.
I'd prefer to send
Well,
you
I
the
can-
PDF.
So long as I can merge the PDF with the
Yeah.
existing PDF.
Yeah, you should be able to do that.
Okay.
So that concludes.
And that's
the-
not unique to you. I mean,
No,
that's,
it's
we don't-
everybody.
we just don't send that out so it can be manipulated. Not that you would do that, but.
Right, right.
So that's the financial report from November. The next page is the expense, the non-benefit payments. Top section of the page are primarily the payments to the board and then the NC Bruce membership. Year-to-date, the non-benefit expense, $36,719.58, and that excludes attorney and professional fees. The fees during the month were $806. The invoice is on the following page, and that's the Dover Dixon payment for the edit the appellate brief. So year-to-date, $89,815.42.
Why does Rusty not appear on these?
Because he is a current employee. It's just a retired member. So.
That's a good question, though.
Well, if you want on
I'm
very
still
high.
active. I'm still active.
Make a motion to approve the financial report.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item B,
I will, what is
to report on change in member status.
That's the page you wrote out.
Yeah, that's the next page, I think, make a motion to remove Mr. Willis Harris from the pension roll and to approve the widow pension of Louise Harris, amount of $1,362.47, and to approve the death benefit on behalf of Mr. Harris in the amount of $6,500.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item C,
I've followed up with the AR CPA, and I still do not have a response on the ethics question. I sent them the information, the memo from the attorney, and I just don't have a response yet. But that's what Mr. Hathaway recommended that I do.
They're working on it.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry.
since this issue has finally come up before the board, I don't have any problem with ignoring it in the future, but it had never come up before, so I felt like it had to come back up on the agenda each month. But,
so at this point, that item will not appear.
No, it's tabled.
right,
We're waiting to report.
right. But I don't see it as an issue any longer because of the city sales tax going into effect and us not being an insolvent fund.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't my issue, it was Ferris's issue to begin with.
It was.
Yeah. You asked the question that she requested time to respond to.
No, it wasn't my issue, Steve. I didn't put that on the agenda. The issue arose from the email that she sent.
Yeah, but you asked her the question during the meeting, Ferris, that she, and her response to your question was that she needed another month.
And I asked that it be tabled in order to allow her another month.
Right, right.
And, look, okay, let's just,
All right.
whatever you want to do with it, Steve, it's my recommendation, and I don't care what you do, is just simply leave it on the agenda, and like I've always wanted to do, is to allow her adequate time to get the opinions that she needs to answer the question, that's all.
Okay. It doesn't make me any difference.
I thought it did for previous meetings, but let's go.
I guess we can put it on the agenda next month.
Well,
For me, it's not an issue, but,
okay. Next item is board member topics of discussion, audit of membership for eligibility.
Yes. In a discussion with David Clark, the director of the PRB, well, first of all, in the past, on occasions, we have audited the members in terms of them continuing to be eligible. Looking back on the report that was provided here, Ms. Dean Garrett still owes around $45,000, and that's because she grew her mother's benefits for years after her death, illegally. So, Mr. Clark, what they do on the end of it is there is a company, and the cost is rather modest, as a matter of fact. They have a company that has a database of deaths throughout the country. And with a list of our eligible, who we are paying benefits to, who we believe are eligible members, they can run those in a database. And any of them that might have passed away, and their death records come from Social Security, then that would identify potentially any member who has passed away. And I would suggest that administrative staff contact the PRB and get some information on this database and the cost, and put it on the agenda to report at the January meeting.
It's called a death bank, and they can run members and spouses that are receiving these checks. And that's to bring Ms. Atkinson's records. Steve, on what we're talking about. Years ago, we had to hire a private investigator to go through these member lists and find out who was alive and who wasn't alive. Well, he found out that the member had passed away, which we knew. We passed a check on to the spouse who she was drawing it, and we do direct deposits. We were sending that check to a banking account. Well, this spouse's daughter got on the checking account as a co-signer on the account. She was signing checks because her mother was elderly and wasn't able to pay her bills. So we kept sending that check to that account. That daughter, who was 50-something years old at the time, kept cashing those. She'd go into the bank and write checks off that check we were sending to the bank. And it was about $50,000 before we caught her. And we had to get a private investigator to do that. Ferris has talked to David Clark, who is a much better, cheaper way of doing it. And they can know within a few weeks, before the month's over, if they have passed away. And he holds those checks immediately. And he said it's not uncommon for them to have several a month come in.
So how frequently do they run that check? Do they run it each month? Or
PRB runs it.
Quarterly?
Quarterly, I believe. PRB runs it now.
Do you have a statute of limitations as to when you can recoup money?
I don't think so.
Have you filed charges?
We filed.
Yeah,
She's paying it
She's
back.
making monthly payments now.
Yeah,
Arrested.
she's on just a payment
But she
plan.
uses it.
She's paying
That
it-
has been my
She's paying it back at
concern.
$150 a month with no interest.
That has been my concern,
When
because
she makes
earlier
payments.
this year, Claudine Armstrong, I forget, she never sent her widow's affidavit in last year. So I started holding her check, and she never contacted me. And the only number I could come up with was of her grandson, and I left 3 or 4 messages, and he wouldn't return my call. So I finally stopped the check, like in February, and to this day, it's still not
Are
heard
you
anything.
serious? And I wasn't aware of that.
Well, I had brought it up earlier because, I
Hey,
did.
you asked for permission to hold the check, and
Yeah.
we did.
We did that, yeah.
Well, I wasn't aware that since February, no.
No, well, see, I've not been issuing them. In February, I stopped
I know.
issuing.
Right.
And then I
You
finally
already brought
voided
that
the
up.
checks.
We did bring that, but I wasn't aware.
She's never called in.
No, and I've tried to research newspapers in the Branson area, and I cannot come up with a death or anything. I did contact her bank, and of course, they're not allowed to give that information out, but they did confirm. I said, they said, we can't confirm anything about her account, which I knew they couldn't, but still.
Is that the only thing they confirmed, that they couldn't, you about to say they confirmed something?
No, they
She
couldn't
allowed to be
confirm
aware of it.
anything whenever I called the bank. And I
How
said,
much
well, can
money
you tell me
is
if she's
how much
alive or
was the
dead? They
check?
said, no, we
It's a
cannot.
benefit, monthly benefits.
Well, could they confirm that someone with that name had an account in their bank?
Well,
Or is he married?
now, she would have had the account, because whenever they change bank accounts, I get a copy of a check and I void it. And it's, it has their name on it. So the account originally was hers.
But
it
the
is
widow's
her-
affidavit we had gotten the previous year, we just didn't get one when we did it this year, right?
Well, not last month. This was like the end of 2010. She never returned her affidavit. So whenever they don't return them, and I give them like I send them 3 letters, then I'll hold their
Stop the
check.
benefits.
But I do think we need to come up with a way to check members periodically.
This is a relatively inexpensive way, I think a very effective way, so maybe we can get it done.
So you just want us to come up with the cost is that?
The cost and
Yeah,
basically, they would have to, I'm sure, have Social Security numbers.
What was it called
Kathy,
again?
don't you have her social security number?
What was it
Oh,
called
yeah, we
again?
do.
You can run the
Death
social
bank.
security number on the
Death bank.
computer and see if she's dead or not.
Well, if I do that, the only thing I've come up with a database is they want to charge a fee.
We might cost Social Security too. I don't know what they'll tell us, but we might
Well,
try that.
I mean, this will take care of it. This is
Yeah,
what,
Kathy and I'll look into this. We'll call PRB and all of that and look into this and see what the cost would be and everything, and we'll report back.
Great. Sound good.
I'd like to point out that Deborah is wearing a red sweater and has a red cell phone case. I think there's something going on here.
He commented on mine at the funding committee meeting. It's our new fashion statement.
that's coordinated.
Well, I didn't get the memo.
All right, one member comments.
Now you match.
Any additional comments? Other business?
Go ahead, you start off.
I think they got some comments.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was just going to report, I've sent it out to the board members, and it needs to go over the minutes, that the Supreme Court ruled on the lawsuit in the pension funds, in the pension funds favor. Of course, as any lawsuit, litigation, there's some that's pleased and some not. But and that was certainly a very divisive issue for the members of our fund. But the Supreme Court is a Supreme Court, and hopefully now we can just move forward and work on the issues.
It was a basic question that needed to be answered. It got answered. They've ruled. It's time to move on. We can't, there's nowhere else to go with it anyway.
I got a question on that. Is our attorney, Dover Dixon, requested attorney fees, or?
I don't know. I'm sure he will report it.
That's part of what the $806 invoice in your packet.
Well, but they mean for resolution of the
Oh.
case, would he be, is that, will it cover the attorney's fees? Is
I
that?
don't know.
There shouldn't be any additional attorney fees. It's done. Listen, they do everything up there at that
Right.
level themselves. Once it's submitted to them, you don't do anything else from attorney.
Yeah, and I think he's billed us for the work that
Yeah,
they've
it's
done on
done.
it as they've done it. So I don't think there's any other cost.
I'm sorry, I guess my ears are getting worse because I'm having more difficulty.
What
being able to hear
he's,
you.
Rusty, what he, I think, is referencing is in the lawsuit, the fund, I believe at some point, asked for attorney fees if the fund prevailed. And I think is that what you're asking about? And then my answer to that was, I don't know. I don't know if that was part of the ruling or not. You would think it was, since it was a question, part of the question in the lawsuit. I don't know the answer to that, but Dean Overstreet has been out of town. He sent that email one night or early the next morning, or early of the morning. And then when I responded to him that morning, it came back that he was out of the office for a week or 2 weeks.
Anything else?
Yeah, we talked about, in our funding committee meeting, Sarah, we were discussing, we talked a lot about a lot of important issues in the last two meetings that has never gotten into the minutes. And we've thought about bringing in another business today where we could get that, what we had talked about this morning at 8 o'clock meetings, some of that put into the minutes of this meeting. And I'd like my suggestion, put in the minutes about the Laffey merger request, and that Sarah is going to research the subpoena fees and warrant fees to see how much it is coming in for the Laffey merger, and also put the cost of the merger into the fund with Ecola, and the minutes with Ecola.
And,
Well, I don't have a problem doing that. However, I don't have a recording to listen to. What you're asking me to do is basically do it from memory, and if I had made a recording of that meeting, it would be one thing, but if you'll just write up or let me know what you want written up in the minutes, I'll add it in there, but I can't just remember what we discussed.
I think if that's the way we're gonna approach it, we're just gonna have to add an item to the agenda that says funding committee update and then do a report on that, because, I mean, Lee, I don't think it's gonna be fair to, I think you said to just report what the number is with the COLA. I think you have to submit the entire report, and, again, if we want to do that as a sort of a funding committee update, I mean, that's going to, I mean, one of the reasons we decided to meet before the meeting was not to have, not to impact the length of this meeting already. So it looks like we're going to, whatever we talked about at the funding committee, we're going to talk about it again at the regular meeting.
Just for throwing out suggestions, should we have a minutes of the funding committee and attach them to the minutes of the regular meeting? Is that just throwing that out for suggestions to members? Hear what they think about it. Sarah, what do you think about that?
Well,
I'm just trying to get information to the members of what we...
Well, I had thought that I mean, it don't make me any difference, I don't suppose, but we originally set up this committee to not have the meetings recorded and not have anything in the minutes, or not create minutes for it. Now, if we're wanting to go back on that now, then I suppose we can, but I think that would hold true to the past minutes, or past meetings anyway. And I don't know what our original purpose was in doing that, but.
Well, I do, and it was after the report that you all made to the board, and it was dealing with the potential insolvency of the fund, and that was when the suggestion was, you all asked the board to set this committee up, and the vice mayor at that time was involved, and now Director Adcock, and it's morphed into something else, obviously, because it was reported earlier that we're off the insolvency list. So,
I think it was originally set up so that those who spoke during that committee meeting would feel more or less inhibited in their speech if they knew it wasn't going to be recorded and wasn't going to be the subject of minutes. But that was my remembrance anyway, but I don't really recall.
Well, just leave it alone. If there's anything relevant, bring it up in a board meeting under other business.
I think it's good, I'm fine with that.
I think all Lee wanted to do was just simply inform the members in a very brief way of a couple of the critical issues that the funding committee is dealing with. I think that's all he was trying to do. There's no need.
I don't have a problem with that. However, and Mr. Moore is correct. If you, when when you start adding or putting figures into a report, and this minutes is the official report of this meeting, and you don't designate or show those total figures or where they came from, I think you leave that up to someone's guess as to where it comes from. And consequently, I think you need to put the information in there.
Didn't Jody's report get posted to your
Didn't it what?
site? Did Jody's report in its
Oh, yeah,
entirety
yeah.
get posted?
Right. That did.
I mean, another avenue that you all use a lot, and it's good, is, you know, your member page. You know, there's, I know Steve submits a report or kind of your synopsis of the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Lee, you
Bulletin page.
you could do that. I would really be hesitant to add something to the official record of the minutes that was outside of the meeting.
Okay,
And
I
that-
understand.
How about Lee getting with Steve on a little brief synopsis for the bulletin that goes out? Because the deal is
That would be great.
I think that's fine.
That's fine, okay.
There,
I'm good
I
with
do
that.
think it should be in the minutes, and I know Mr. Hensley brought it up when we were talking, I think with the financial report from Stevens, and that is that this fund has been removed from the projected insolvency list, and that needs to get into the minutes.
Sure.
Yeah, I've got the list here. Thanks, Ms. Coates.
Yes.
Well, I think Ferris brought that up on the.
He did, I just want to make sure that it,
Okay, there's a schedule of
Yeah.
2012 meetings.
on page 13, your tab 13, and this is for the year. First meeting in January will be the 12th. Or the second Thursday.
Looks like they're all the second Thursday. It's gonna be difficult.
Always on Thursday.
I never decided to
Change
take
it.
like a little summer break or anything over there,
Be nice with
Let's change it.
I'd like to let you know
Fire
that
folks even.
February 24th is my birthday. You might want to make a note of that.
And
And
I want to
lunch,
make y'all know
Katie.
too, actually January, and I forgot about this, that's the conference. I'm actually scheduled to be at a conference, and so I will miss the meeting on the 12th.
January?
I couldn't even begin to look into it.
That means you won't be here for the update on the,
No, but I mean, we can look into it and send information with staff
Update on what? Update
on
on what?
how,
They hear it.
how we're
How
going
we're
to
going.
approach finding the, well, I guess that's for the funding committee meeting anyway.
Right.
Said one.
So we'll have a funding committee meeting still in this.
I just had one other thing. Could we set another funding committee at 8 o'clock, the next meeting, second Thursday of next month? And maybe we can talk some more about the funding committee. Maybe you could have some figures for
Well,
us.
I'll have to send them with staff because I'm going to be
Yeah.
at that conference.
Right.
Now, if y'all want to record the minutes and have minutes for the funding committee meeting, I don't
I
have a
think we've
problem
already
with it.
dealt with
We've
that.
already dealt with
Yeah.
I thought Steve was going to do that.
Any other business?
Move that we-
Adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Stand adjourned.